How's it going, everybody? This is Nick with Up Factory Racing. We're back in the garage again with the Mazda Miata 1.8 cylinder head. And what we're going to do today is we're going to put in the cam seals and we're going to put in the Supermiata coolant reroute kit. So what we're going to do first is lube up these seals and slip them right around the camshaft here. And what I like to do is when I take the cam cap off, I'll put two little blobs of RTV, just very small blobs. And when I put it back down and it squishes out on it, and it'll help seal the actual seal in there without pinching it. And then what I do is I'll wipe off whatever excess is remaining right there. So that way, when we go to put the valve cover gasket on, it'll have a nice sealing surface on it. So a little handy trick I just found, I've used it before on other engines and stuff, is if these cam caps get stuck, whenever you pull the bolts out, if you just kind of slip them in, but don't thread them. You kind of bring them up a little bit, and what you do is you'll use them to rock back and forth, and then whoop, it shall pop right off. You really want to avoid sticking any kind of flathead screwdrivers or anything in here and jamming on this, because once you destroy this sealing surface, you're going to have a really hard time sealing it back up. Alright, let's see if I can do this one-handed. So I got my little squirter here. Just squirt a little bit of oil on there. Kind of grab it, lube it up, grab the seal, slide it around with our fingers. The inside's all nice and lubed, and slip it right on. It's not very easy to do one-handed. all the other YouTubers like, ooh yeah, boop boop boop, one-handed. Okay, so I got her on there. Try to slide her back, make sure she's seated nice and flush in there. And so what I'll do now is I'll take the cam cap and I'll put just tiny little dots right there and right there of RTV. You don't really want to glob it in there because you don't want it like going on the actual camshaft and ruining that or anything. So you kind of have to be really careful. A lot of people probably would skip this and not even bother doing this. I do it because I've seen sometimes where it'll actually get down in here and then leak past, like right at this little lip right here. It'll actually like leak out, and then you'll start to have just sealing issues right here. So that's just something I've always done in the past. All right, with the tiniest little dot on here, I went ahead and just kind of smeared it around. Notice it's not super globbed on here. You don't really want to do that. Matter of fact, I kind of want to stay away from the cam journal. Wipe it off. It's going to squish a little bit. Alright, so she's wiped down. I went ahead and wiped all the excess oil off. We'll go ahead and set this down on here. Alright, like so. Throw the two bolts up in here. And we'll be torquing these down to 120 inch-pounds, just like all the other cam caps require. Okay, so we got it to 120 inch-pounds. If you can look on here, just a tiny little bit of squish out, and that's really all you want. You don't want to like have it super thick, and that's all I did. Both sides looks just about the same. So what I'll do now is just on the inside here, just wipe it off so that way it's nice and sealed. When we go to put the valve cover gasket back on there. So the exhaust cam is on, nice and clean. Now we'll go ahead and wipe it off, and we will put on the timing plate on here, and then we're going to go ahead and put the cam gears on. First, before we do that, we actually have to install the block-off plate right here on the front, because we're actually going to be eliminating this piece here with the coolant reroute kit. So there's the nice simple instructions and all the hardware that they give you. I mean, they get it ready for you. They give everything up. This is the actual thermostat that you'll be using in here, and versus the stock thermostat, which this one You can see it's stamped at a 44 mil. This one is stamped at a 52 mil. So you cannot reuse your factory thermostat on this, which is fine because they actually give you everything. They give you the thermostat. So in the kit, they give you this applied gasket maker for water pump housings and thermostat housings. We're going to apply a bead around the back of this and kind of smear it nice and flat like we just did with the cam caps. And then we'll go ahead and mount it right on the front there. Looking nice and pretty. Alright, so now we're nice and good, nice and tight on there. And so, just so everybody knows, there is no actual supplied gasket because, as you know, the actual factory one, this is one of those like round rubber squish gaskets. They didn't actually come with any type of gasket other than the sealer, the silicone. So you should be good on that. Now we're going to go ahead and put the actual timing plate on here so we can get these cam gears on. It's almost a shame to have to put this on. It kind of covers up this little nice little Supermiata block off plate here, but you do need it for your timing marks. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and switch over to the back side of the cylinder head. If I didn't mention this earlier, since we're eliminating that, we don't actually need to use this, so we can actually just use it for like a key fob, is what Supermiata refers or suggests to do. So it's kind of cool looking. All right, now that we got the back all turned around here, so basically I've cleaned this up and like clean the surface and everything. First, we'll take this, the thermostat, and we'll actually drop it in face down like so, and we put the C-clip in it. It's just one. All right, guys, I can tell you this: whenever messing with like C clamps like this and stuff, and you have your little pliers like this, always wear safety glasses, because this was a bit of a faff to try to get this in. You kind of had to move the actual thermostat around to work it in. Usually I always put in like the big side first and then work down the front, except this time it worked backwards, where I put this side in and kind of worked it around and had the back up, moving the thermostat around as I like pushed down the clip here, and it seated in it. So that was a little bit of a faff. Right now we're gonna put on this like really nice, well machined, like if you can get down there and look and see all the machining of the edges in there. In their video, they were talking about that they machined it so that way there was no real hard spots in there that heat could build up on. But it is beautiful. It is very beautifully crafted. And the kit itself, I think, was only like $214, $220, which, you know, to save an investment that you're sinking a couple of hundred, if not thousands of dollars in, it was definitely well worth it. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the RTV, the silicone RTV, back on it, on this side right here, and then we're going to mount it up to it and we're going to tighten it down. Okay, so like looking at this now, they supply you with pretty much every bit of hardware that you're going to need to do this. The only complaint is that the factory hardware, like this bolt that goes in right here, when you mount this up like this, you don't really have enough room in there to get that bolt on. So like I've tried putting it on and then running a socket down it. It's not going to work. Tried a box wrench and an open wrench. Didn't work. So what I ended up having to do was go and grab a new bolt. I guess this is a 5mm socket, or a little 5mm Allen bolt with the lock on it. I got the 25mm, and I just went ahead and got the little locking washer. It was like $1.19 for the bolt, and then 55 cents for the washer. It's not that big a deal. If you're doing this with the cylinder head on, it might be a little more difficult, but I mean, not too bad, especially if you had an Allen key. You should be able to feed that through there and do it a lot easier, because you'll have a lot more space over here to actually use the Allen key, even with it on the cylinder head. All right, so I went ahead and I put a little bead around it and smeared it down with my finger, and we're going to go ahead and mount it up on there. All right, she's nice and tight on there. You see the squish all the way around. That's good, looking good. Since we're not really using any kind of heater core on this, we're deleting it. We're going to go ahead and plug this with the supplied plug right there, and it's got a copper crush washer on it. I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of RTV around the crush washer, as well as this plug for right here. The coolant temp sensor actually screws in here across the top once this side is actually, mounted in there. Alright, so we got those plugs in there. Get it to focus. You gonna focus for me? What's the deal? There you go. Okay, so the large plug is actually an 8mm socket. And this one, funny, is actually a 3/16 socket. And I was wrong. This wasn't an actual 5mm socket. That's a 6mm socket on there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and mount this piece up over here. Alright, so when doing this, you kind of really want to put a very light coat on there. Like, you don't want it globbed on super thick. You just basically kind of blob it on and then run your finger across it. You don't really want a huge, blobs on it, because when it squishes out, you don't want it falling through and then running through your cooling system, because that's typically how radiators get clogged up and stuff. You can backflow it. It's a pain in the butt. Alright, so I caught myself on here because once I actually mounted it up and I went to squish it down, I completely forgot to actually cover around where the coolant sensor was, because I didn't actually see any squish out right there, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, so I went back and and checked that. It's always nice to see that, and whenever you're doing any kind of like coolant, like water pump or any kind of coolant housing and stuff like that, you always want to try to look for that squish out just to make sure that it's good and sealed up. And then of course you got to let it, cure over typically like just a couple hours to 24 hours, depending on the temperature. Alright, so let's see, now we got that squish all the way around. Looks good. Up under there as well. Nice, nice. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and wipe that off, just because I know that it's there. I saw it go all the way around. Down in there as well. And there we go, the nice little bevel in there. Let you see, you got the nice gasket sealer in there. That looks good. And now we're going to go ahead and put in the bleeder valve, which is right there. And we're gonna get a new coolant temp sensor. So for right now, I can use the old sensor just to plug it. But the inside of this is just completely jacked, so I don't trust it, especially being a used part. It's like when you're building something like this, go ahead and just spend the $5 to $10 or whatnot, $15 to get a new sensor just to protect your investment. All right, everything is all nice and snug, all nice and sealed. Looking good back here. And then whenever we put this in the car, we're gonna go ahead and crack the tiny little bleeder right here to bleed out all the air out of the cooling system as we fill it up and it warms up. All right, so we got the cam gears on. So everybody should know this because you can find it really quickly on Google. So this is the exhaust side. I kind of offset this a little. We torque these down to 40 foot-pounds, so it's 480 inch-pounds. And so your intake, that line right there will line up with this little piece right here, and where it's dotted an I. And then over here, the exhaust, which it's not set yet, because I just had to tighten these bolts, will line up here with the E where it's stamped. And like I said, this is the one with the 197.5 degree offset hole. To use that exhaust cam on the intake. And also if you're gonna have to cycle these around, be sure to lube up the lobes if it's been sitting out dry, just so you don't really damage the lifters on there. And right now you can see we got it lined up nice on there, everything's pointing straight up. And the next time you see the cylinder head should be going on the block. Like I said, right now we're going to put it on a stock block with stock compression, stock deck height, and everything for the time being, because we're building the other block. I know that I put this on my Instagram. I did before I started my channel, but we went ahead and I made a block off plate for the idle air control valve, which we're going to go ahead and delete since we're using that Speedy EFI. I mean, it's just your like typical eBay unit. It's good enough, and I think it was either a 70 mil. I'm not 100% sure what the diameter of it is, but we got that to go on the actual Skunk 2 intake manifold that we have, which is kind of difficult when playing with these years, because the Skunk 2 intake manifold does not have the actual placement for the stock idle air control valve out of that engine. And then this, without having to do any kind of like hacking the wiring harness and stuff like that, we're just going to go ahead and delete it. A lot of people are like, oh, don't delete it. You can if you know how to set up your base map. We live in Texas, so we don't have to worry about cold starts. Plus, this car is actually going to be really meant for like summer driving, like warm weather driving. Mostly because the top's going to be down and/or bikini top. So thank you guys. If you like the content so far, go ahead and give a thumbs up. So you can subscribe to my channel if you'd like. I don't do like daily uploads or anything like that, so it's kind of a case of like when I can get to it, because like I said, I work full time. I also go to school, and I do have a family and kids and everything. So this is kind of more of a hobby and a way of cataloging the work that I've done. I mean, I've done a ton of work so far that I just goes like, I just work, and I'd never even thought about like actually wanting to do a video until like about a year or two ago, and I was like, maybe I should do it just as a way of cataloging the work that I do, so I can see all the work that I've done, because I've worked on numerous cars, and this isn't like any specific type of car channel too. I definitely want to make that clear. I like working on pretty much anything mechanical. My dream job, if someone were to say, hey man, do you want to come over and help like rebuild this World War II tank or this World War II airplane engine? Dude, I would be like all over that in a heartbeat if I could. I'm just a huge fan of pretty much anything mechanical. And I had one kid that made me laugh. He was like, oh, so does that mean you like Saturns? And I laughed, and I was like, well, the Ion, like the red Ion, but other than that, all the other ones are kind of garbage. So if you guys like it, like I said, give a thumbs up. Stay tuned for next time. Thank you.